Hello, 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 hello there. Welcome back to the Maternity Diary. If today is your first time joining us, you're welcome to this amazing and I mean it, it's an amazing community, an amazing family. And if this is not your first time here, I say thanks so much for tuning in once again. Okay, so today is a very exciting one for me because we're going to talk about one of the topics that I love, 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 love so much. In today's video, we will be discussing naming your children and why it is important, the kind of things that you need to take into consideration when you're naming your children, and why people basically name their children the way they do. So today we'll be learning together. Picking out a name for your child can be a mix of excitement, anxiety at the same time. Trust me, when I was having both of my kids, by the time I actually gave birth to them, I did not have a name. Like, we hadn't settled on a name for them. For my second, we actually took more than a few couple of days to come up with the right name, the name that we wanted for him. So you can imagine, like, my husband and I, we had a paper and they were writing, okay, this name, no. I write my suggestions. He's like, no. So we kept going back and forth. And I knew the names I wanted to give to my kids, but my husband too also had it in mind what he wanted to name our kids. So we had to go back and forth, and then eventually we settled on a name. So in as much as it can be very exciting, I mean, after all, you've just had a very perfect little one in your hands, and so you're looking for the very perfect name to give to this precious one of yours. So it's not surprising that it doesn't just come like that. There are some people, the names just come like this. Other people, it takes more than just sitting down and, oh, this name just came to mind. No, it takes more research to do that. So before we begin, let's talk about my name. Yes, let's talk about my name. So my full name, my complete full name is Teresa Valerie Yaira Afua Oheneba Donyo Jr. I'm sure you're like, what a long name. Did you ever write it in all in your school registers? So when I was growing up, I remember we used to write my complete full name, including the junior at the back, at the end of the name. We always used to write it, and I was always like embarrassed about it. I'm like, oh, the name is too long, especially with the junior, because I never saw any young girl being called junior. It was usually the boys that were being called junior. So for me to be called junior, I was like, oh, no, I don't want to be called junior. And so I'm going to give you the reasons for my name. So first of all, my name Junior at the end of my name, okay, means that I was named after someone. I'm the junior of someone. And in this case, I was named after my mother, who was Teresa Valentina Oheneba Donyo, and I was Teresa Valerie Oheneba Donyo. So that's where the junior came from. Secondly, so I was named after my mother. Second, the next name that I have is Afua, and I was named Afua because I was born on a Friday. So depending on where you're from, if you're from Ghana, you're most likely to be called by the day that you were born. So for instance, Ama is for Monday. Oh no. No, I'm wrong. No, Ajwa is for Monday, Abena is for Tuesday, Ikea is for Wednesday, Yar is for Thursday, Afua is for or Ifia is for Friday, Ama is for Saturday, and Sunday is AC. I mean, or Akosia. It depends on where you're from, like within Ghana. So if you're from the Volta region, you have a different way of being named, like AC, Ajo, Awo, you know, that kind of thing. And if you're from different, so everybody, like usually everyone in Ghana who was born in Ghana and is Ghanaian will be named by the day that they were born. So the next on my name is Yaira. So Yaira is an Ewe name that means blessing. And aren't I a blessing? Yeah, my parents named me Blessing. I was the first of my siblings, and so I was packaged as a blessing to my family, and I've always been a blessing to them. Yeah. So first off, let's delve into the history of names. Okay, names have always been a very important part of life, and it's been a way for people to be set aside or to be able to be identified or to differentiate people from one another. So sometimes you can even have people with the same name, but they may have like slight differences at the end, even with the spelling and all of that. So yeah, the importance of names is that it helps us to differentiate from one another, to identify one another. In many cultures, names are given because of where they are from, for religious beliefs, or it could be from maybe your traditions. So there are different reasons or ways by which people name their children. And in Ghana, I would refer to Ghana because that's where I was born and I grew up. And in Ghana, usually when a child is born, they are not named until after the 8th day. On the 8th day, that's when they are named. So beyond being names being a means of being identified, naming can also hold significant meaning and symbolism, okay, to families. For example, some parents may name their children based on positive associations, okay. For me, I was named after my mother, first of all, because they wanted me to portray the gentle spirit of my mom, the loving and kind spirit of my mom. And so names can be meaningful to different people for different reasons. So the question is, why is finding the right name so important? Yeah, I know. I mean, we can just name someone John, Amma, Valerie. We can name people, but why is this so important? Why do people take naming their children so important? So there is a thing that I heard when I was growing up, that some people from Asian countries will drop like a spoon to name their children. So if the spoon dropped and you hear cha, then that means that's their name. I was like, really? That doesn't make any sense. And most of these things are made up, by people who do not understand the cultures of people. So for one, let's talk about the importance of names, okay? So for one, names are one of the things that makes people learn about someone else, okay? That's how we can learn about people. Number two, it's usually the first impression that you make. So when you go anywhere, you don't know anybody, the first thing is, what's your name? It's the very first impression that you give to people. It can also shape the way people interact with us, or how people perceive us and interact with us. Another thing is, names can influence a child's self-esteem and self-identity. Oh, some children can be teased by the way they are named, okay? So for me, like I mentioned, my name is Yaira, okay? But then if you take the name Yaira and you take it out of where I come from, okay, my tribe, where I come from, and then you make someone else from a different region, you just mention it to them, the first thing they're going to think is something completely different. So Yaira being blessing, but then in the Tree language, it's not necessarily the same, but it sounds like what they would say, that we are lost, So so in the Akan language, it could sound like we are lost, okay, depending on how people will pronounce the name. So the big question is, how do you go about finding the right name for your precious, perfect little one? So first of all, it's important that you ask yourself, what do you want the child's name to communicate? What do you want it to mean to you, to your family, to people around you? What do you want it to mean? And that will determine if you're going to go the traditional way or your cultural way of naming your kids, or you would have a certain symbol or a certain meaning to it that is personal to what you have experienced in life or what you want the child to portray. So you would have even some people who are Nigerians that can be called success, okay, because they want their children to succeed in life. You have people who are called love because they want them to portray love. You have people called hope or faith because you want them to portray that in everything that they do as they grow up. So depending on what you really want, so you really have to ask yourself, what do I really want to communicate with my child's name? And it goes beyond sounding beautiful, okay? You really have to delve into what it really means for you. The next thing is to consider how your child's name is pronounced, okay? How easy is it to pronounce? How easy is it to spell, okay? And how does it sound when it's pronounced, okay? I'll give you an example. So we have the celebrity, Amy Schumer, who named her son Gene, Gene Attell, okay? Gene Attell, then the rest of the name. And she named her son by this, but then at the time she didn't think about how the combination of the name was going to sound like, okay? So individually these names are unique, but then when you put it together it sounded like genital, okay? Genital. You get what I mean? Yeah. So she actually changed her child's name, her son's name, because she realized that the way she never thought about how the combination of the name will sound. So it's important to also, it's not just about just a single name, but if you're giving your child two, let's say for instance, two English names, you need to ask yourself, how does it sound together? Because you will definitely have people calling their names together or individually, okay? And sometimes it's not easy to determine for sure how people should call your child, whether they should call him by the first English name or the second English name or both of them. I go to places usually when they will ask me, do you go by Teresa or do you go by Valerie? I'm like, well, I don't mind. I mean, because I've been all over the world, I've had people call me either Tess, Teresa, Valerie, Val, Valley, Terry. Like even my brothers have this special name for me, Terry. They always call me Terry, okay? And it was because we were trying to avoid calling me Sister Yaira. Like my mom was always ensuring that they need to call me Sister Yaira because I was their big sister and I wasn't their age mate. So in being creative about the names of our kids, we need to consider that, okay? So it's important for us not to be scared about how creative that we want to be, okay, in naming our children. Don't be scared at all. Last and most important thing to consider when you're naming your child is that the name that you are giving your child should make you feel very proud. Okay, so you should be proud of the name that you are giving your child. You cannot give your child a name that you can't even mention it because you feel like it's embarrassing or it doesn't sound so great or it's not the perfect name for my child. You know, I have friends who have kids who are like 3 years old, and there was a time I was talking to them and then he was like, I don't know if I've still come to terms with my child's name. I'm like, what? Just because you're like, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to pronounce. And I can imagine like how other people will be having issues trying to pronounce my children's name. So please take your time. There is no need to rush when you're naming your child, okay? You can take a few days, a few weeks to name your child. No one is rushing you. So let me give you okay, before we get there, let me consider one more thing to consider when you're naming your child. You can also consider the popularity of the name. So sometimes people like to go by how popular the name currently is, and usually if you go through the registries, you will know what's the most popular names for a particular year is. So there have been years that the most popular name for a boy was John, and then for a baby girl was Emma. Okay, so you can also consider that. Another thing to consider is initials of your kids' names, especially if you're going to like have multiple first names with middle names or added. You need to ask yourself, what do the initials connote? Okay, yeah, because for example, you may have the initials of a child. I don't know, I can't think of anything right now. Let's say you have okay, so let's say you have your child's name. So your child has two English names. So Paul Otis, and then the middle name is maybe Ofori, and then the last name is maybe Peterson. Okay, so just look at the initials P-O-O-P, and what does it sound like? Poop. You know, so it's important for you to consider the initials of the child also. Sometimes we do not think about this, and maybe by that time you're like so excited about your newborn baby, you're not even thinking about the initials. So it's important you look at the initials, because you never know what the initials could mean. My initials, I love it, it's TVOD, and I love to talk about my initials. But if your initial is poop, imagine your child will go to school and people will really realize, the initials of your name is poop. It's going to be a disaster. So please consider the initials of your child's name. And okay, so I'm going to put on the screen right now. I spoke with a few of the wonderful mothers in this community and parents in this community, actually, what names they gave to their children and why they named their children the way they named them. So you can look on the screen right here as it pops up for us to know the reasons why some people give their kids certain names.
Do your best now, cause you don't know about tomorrow. So if nobody else will do it, I'ma lead and they can follow. See, I'ma live my life right, there's no sorrow. And I'ma give, I didn't come here to borrow. Cause when I look around, I see the fresh and pain. You won't believe what I found, I guess I'm not the same. So when I lose myself, I really know your names. Love lives seven always,
yeah. So for me personally, for both of my kids, I named them because of my own experience. Okay, so first of all, they were all given like the days that they were born. So my first is Kwesi, my second is Kofi, because the first was born on a Sunday, second was born on a Friday. And then the English name for my first is Nathan, which means a gift from God, because at the time we're like, oh, he's just a wonderful gift from God. It's just a gift from heaven to us. And the second one, because of my experience with gestational diabetes and how worried I was and all that experience I went through, we named him Marcel. That means strong warrior, because he came right out way before even the induction date, and we felt like he was a strong warrior and he had fought through this difficult time. And yeah, so we named him that. Okay, so we also named my kids by their the name that traditionally where we come from, from our tribe. So my husband's tribe is fully Ewe, and so we named my first Kelly, which means the light of God, or the light of God is shining, or God shines, the light shines. Okay, because we want him to be a shining example wherever he goes. And then the second was called Sally, which means God lives. So just think about like what it connotes to you. It doesn't always have to be the meaning of the name and maybe a personal connection, but it can also be what you really want them to portray out there, okay, as they grow up. So it's very important not to feel pressure when you're naming your child. Don't feel pressure to take a very trendy name. Don't be tempted to follow the trends or baby name trends, because you might be making a huge mistake, and 3 years down the line you'll feel like, oh, I need to change my child's name, and it's cumbersome to change your child's name if you already named him. So choose a name that, first of all, it's important to you, that you are very proud of, and you know that your child will be happy with also in the long term. They'll be proud of the name. And it's important to even try to be explaining what the name really means to them, also why you named them the way you did. In most places, if you're doing a naming ceremony in Ghana, or you're a Catholic and you're going to baptize your child, or you are even a Protestant, you're going to dedicate your child in church, usually they'll ask you, what is the child's name? And they ask you, why did you name your child this? And it's an opportunity for you to actually explain why you named your child that. I recently went somewhere and then we're asking everyone, why did you name your child that? And someone actually said, because I really like the name, the way the name sounds. I saw there's an actress that's on TV that I really like the combination of her name, so I used it to name my child. That is perfectly normal, and that is perfect. Okay, don't let anyone influence you to ask yourself, what is the meaning of your child's name? You don't have to tell the meaning. If it's associated with something that is important to you, you can always tell them, okay, this is why I named my child that, and no one can question you. What is more important is that you know what it means to you and you are proud of that name. So with a little thought and consideration, you can find the perfect name for your precious, perfect little one. And so I hope you learned something from today's video. If you have children, or you yourself, you know the meaning of your name or why your parents named you that way, please put in the comment section why you were named the way you were named. And if you have children, why did you name your children the way you did? Thank you very much. If you love this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Please do share this video so that we can grow this beautiful community, okay? And yeah, so until next time, don't forget to stay happy, stay healthy, stay beautiful, and remember that God loves you. See you next time on the Maternity Diary. Mwah.
I'ma live my life like it's my last.